Going on YouTube? RDAP Dan here, Federal Prison Time Consulting. Hope you guys are having an amazing Sunday. It's Sunday, not Saturday. I know a lot of you were waiting for this video yesterday, but what'd you have to do, Holly? You have to get your nails done?
Flat tire, AAA. No, not my nails done, unfortunately.
So we're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to join us here. We're probably about 3 minutes early for those of you that are actually sticking to the schedule. But we do have some people in the room. Who do we got here? We got Daniel, Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca. Rebecca's who the video is for, actually. Rebecca is facing a prison sentence. She hasn't been sentenced yet, but there's a good chance she's going to be remanded into custody next week. So she really asked if we could do a video with somebody that could explain from a woman's perspective what to deal with. And even though Holly, how much time did you spend any time in county jail prior?
I did spend 2 months in county jail.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be good for you, Rebecca. You can ask some of those questions there that you have. So guys, just be respectful. Holly's been on the show before. If you guys remember, Holly did a video with us. Geez, it's been about 1.5 years, Holly, I think.
It has been too long. Yeah.
And you guys all you've been asking me, when am I going to have Holly back on? So here you go. So Holli Coulman, you spent you were sentenced to 21. Go ahead and tell a little bit of your story. I'll let you tell it.
Sentenced to 21 months. I did my time at Victorville. I spent 13 months in Victorville at the camp. I did 2 months in the SHU, the Special Housing Unit, which was located at the San Bernardino County Jail. So I was in county jail for 2 months. And then I did 3.5 months at a halfway house. So a total of about a little over 18 months. That was I didn't lose my good time. It's off a 21-month sentence. So that was my little journey.
And, it sounds like a little journey. And when it's crazy because nobody says that unless they've been to prison and they've done a lot of time and they're like, oh, you only have to do 13 months in the Fed. You don't know how lucky you were. Granted, yes, in the end, it's probably better than, getting sentenced to more time or in a harsher situation. But what was it like when you were getting ready? I know we spoke about this on the last time you were on, but how long from the time that you got in trouble with Hewlett Packard to the time that you went to prison, how much time went by?
So I was a little bit delayed from the first video. From the time that I pled, from the time I actually got in trouble and was doing the investigation piece until I actually self-surrendered at Victorville, it was 2 years. So 2 years of fear, going through, every type of emotion, just being scared to death the entire time, scared to death of what's going to happen, not knowing, trying to find out, fear of going to prison, fear of relationships, how I'm going to maintain those, fear of I felt like my life was completely over. I'm done. From a reputation standpoint, it was just nothing but fear. So had to kind of help and just slow down and break it down. And you and your team do a very good job of helping people and getting them through each of the steps of the process. I always say there's 5 steps to this. It's pre-sentence. It is sentencing, it's your incarceration piece, it's halfway house home confinement, and it's supervised release. And each step, you got to break it down because there's so much to each part. And each part, now that I know, now I wish I knew then, it would have taken all that fear away. So yeah, 2 years until
that's a long time, and
a long time.
That's the real prison sentence, I think, for a lot of people, because it's just this cloud dangling that you really don't know what's next. And no matter how many people tell you it's not going to be that bad, we have clients all the time. We tell them where you're going. You're going to go to a camp or a low security. Right. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Not bad. Yeah.
But until you get there, you just don't know. So we're going to jump into this. So what topic do you think is really important for people? Like, we'll focus on Rebecca, because Rebecca's getting ready to go into county jail for possibly several weeks, a couple of months before she even gets sentenced.
Okay.
But give some insight that Rebecca could take with her into county as a woman's perspective.
Okay. So for Rebecca, this is a very specialized piece, because if you're remanded from court, you are going to be taken immediately, and you will be taken to be processed, and you're probably going to be held again for several weeks in a county jail. And with the government shutdown, it's not going to make things any easier as well, because a lot of things are getting bottlenecked and backed up. But from an emotional standpoint, yes, you're going to be entering a world where guards and officers, their prime concern is just they're perfunctory. Every day, this is what they do. They get up. They aren't going to care if you're going to cry. They're not going to care about your family. They're not going to care anything. They're just going to get you through the process. So you'll be taken probably down. Everything is usually down in the bottom of a courthouse. You'll be processed, meaning you're going to have DNA swab. You're going to have fingerprints done. They're going to be probably just very, again, perfunctory with you, and just tell you, ask you certain questions. They're not going to have chit chat with you. They're not, again, going to care about what just happened to you upstairs. Their process is to get you into whatever holding place, whether it's going to be general population, or they're going to assess those particular things just based on you, or if they're going to give you, put you in your own cell if they have the room for you. Again, they do an assessment on that, whether you're going to be put in general population or not. So they're going to go through, again, a whole type of personal shakedown on you. They ask you, they're going to have a female with you. You're going to probably go into a bathroom type of setting, and you're going to do change your clothes. You're going to be dressed out. So this is another part where they're going to go through your hair, your ears. They're going to look in your mouth. They're going to ask you to lift up your tongue. They're going to have you lift up each breast. They're going to have you turn around, lift up each foot, and they're going to have you do squat and cough. So you're going to be doing this piece in county jail, and then you're going to do it again when you get to your camp that you'll be assigned to. But you need to understand that you're going to go through this full process immediately, right then and there. They're going to take your picture, again, get you your county jail attire, which is going to be, underwear, a jog bra, a t-shirt, socks, and typically it's orange. You're going to be wearing, typically it's orange, typically.
Just like the TV show, huh?
Yeah. Then they're going to hand you a tub. And Dan, I know you know this. They're going to hand you a tub. And in your tub is going to be just a cup, a spork. And everybody's always like, what's a spork? Get used to a spork for however long your sentence is. If you don't know
what a spork is, you need to go to Taco Bell.
Yeah, you'll have that.
What's a tub? It's
a tub. It's a gray little small tub. It's just like.
It's like a big Tupperware.
Yeah, like big Tupperware.
We got two questions real quick on this topic that Rebecca and then Marianne also asked. Rebecca wants to know, why did you have to spend so much time in county? And Marianne wants to know what decides if someone is remanded or not.
Okay. These are two very good questions. So let's get the first one. The reason why I spent 2 months in a county, I actually did not know how long I was going to spend in county jail. I was taken out from Victorville because I blogged about women's safety while I was there, and there was an incident and they didn't like that. So they gave me a level 1 shot. They expunged the shot before I left the facility, but they didn't care. So I was transported, and I didn't know how long I was going to be there, 30 days, 60 days. They don't tell you. It's not like something that they're going to, oh, you're just going to be here, 90 days, and then you're going to go back. I had no idea what was going to happen to me. This is not necessarily what's going to happen to you, except the only unknown piece is, again, with the government shutdown, you're not necessarily in the Grand Prairie. The Federal Bureau of Prisons has to designate you, and they don't move quickly. They take their time. So the reason why I spent 2 months was, again, for something that was expunged later, and I did not know. So I did get 60 days full treatment in a county jail.
And so just so they understand, a lot of the camps, women's camps, do not have special housing units, AKA the SHU, solitary confinement.
Right.
So when you violate something within the prison at a camp, instead of sending you to the SHU because there's nowhere to send you, they bring you to county jail. So you didn't spend, any pretrial time in county, correct?
Correct. I did not. It was
Okay.
specifically for this infraction. And that, again, it wasn't an infraction, but what you have to know is that you are a federal prisoner too, being held in a county jail. So county jail, they don't know anything about you. They house you, but they don't manage you. So they're going to take all their direction from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. They aren't going to know necessarily when you're going to be transferred, what facility you're going to go to, until almost right before it happens. That has been my, for the women that I have helped, that has been what I have been told. I have also seen it. So if you ever have a question for an officer or a guard there, they're not going to be able to answer anything because you're a federal inmate. They only handle county. They're only there to, again, just manage the time that you have there.
So does that answer your question to those of you that were asking about, so just realize if you make a goof, and now Holly didn't really make a goof, so, but, right. but she might as well have, right? She might as well have just hauled off and punched somebody in the face because she got the same type of a treatment. They reprimanded her because she was blogging and they didn't like what she was blogging about because it was outing a lot of the shady shit the prison was doing.
Correct.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit too, because this government shutdown is really interesting to me with a lot of the stories that I read. I was actually just interviewed on USA Today. Hopefully the story doesn't get too old before they decide to release it, but it's something that's really close to me, and I'm sure it is to you as well. Some of the other questions we had, I'm trying to keep track of them. They're coming in so damn fast. Marianne asked, so this is going to be based on your opinion, Holly, because I see it all over the board, so I can't give a straight answer on this. So I'd like to hear your take. What causes somebody to be remanded at sentencing or change a plea, accepting your plea, versus those that are allowed to stay out? And obviously, if you're some kind of a crazy, violent person, that's done deal. You're going to get remanded. But for the average non-violent offender, first time, white collar, blue collar, why are some remanded and some not?
Okay, so this is my opinion. I've had several women that I've worked with that have been remanded. And it's based on, again, if it's in the plea, and again, the judge is basically sentencing you and being remanded immediately. It's because you have, to them, you have no personal affairs to get in order. There is no more need to delay anything for you to get anything set. That has been with the women that I have. They are just going to take you immediately. So it's based on, again, I think your public defender, your federal public defender, or your attorney, if they can't make the case for you that you have certain things to get in order, then you'll be remanded. Has that been some of the same things that you have experienced, Dan?
Yeah, I would say less than 5% of my clients get remanded. The majority self-surrender, and a lot of what you just said typically plays a role. Also, the other factor is some judges just remand you. That's just what they do.
That's the way they work. And unless you do your research on that particular judge and look at previous cases, again, it's just about, if you do that work and look to see what the percentage is, then you can be a little bit more prepared. But yeah, some judges just do that.
And guys, that's why it's all the more important that if you're working with somebody like myself or Holly or any other prison consultant, everything that you're doing while you are out waiting for your plea agreement, whatever it is, everything that you're doing with your day-to-day, clearly staying out of trouble goes without saying, but going above and beyond, programming, AA, NA, community service, making it known that you're doing the right thing. You can see a judge that 99% of the time turns right, make a left-hand turn and do something out of the norm because you're showing them something that's completely different. Yes. That's very practical of what we try to preach.
It's impactful. It is very impactful, and it can be. So But that's typically what happens. You know, it's if they feel that there's nothing else, we're going to remand you right away.
All right, let's see here. Daniel Kurz has and anything you want to talk about, Holly. You're running the show. I'm just used to never shutting up. So feel free to say RDAP Dan, shut the up and let Holly talk. You guys can tell me too. But Daniel has a question. Are you able to read the questions, Holly, or no?
I can't see them. No.
Okay, cool. Okay. Daniel Kurz, Holly, could you possibly share how a prison sentence and a felony record is not the end of the world? Thanks.
It's a very good question. I am actually a success was what I say. I've been I've worked very, very hard. When you are released, or even at the halfway house, there are certain things, including supervised release. You are required to look for full-time job or have full-time employment. And it's not easy getting a job with a felony on your record. Everybody knows this. Most of the jobs that you have to take are very menial, and it's just hard work. And I know that, and I was faced with that. So I looked at county, city jobs, yes, crazy government jobs, places that perhaps did ban the box, that would let me at least get my foot in the door and then explain my conviction, because you have to disclose. Really work on how to explain that to a potential employer of my felony conviction. I owe $954,000, $1 million. I have one count of wire fraud and I'm a felon. And, you know.
Want me to write you a check here, Holly?
Why didn't you do that? Yeah, I'm making a big dent out of it. But you have to just keep going. Temp agencies, explain it to temp agencies out there. Don't stop. Network with the friends that you do have. You know, I have friends that went through the system, got out and said, hey, I'm working for so-and-so, and this particular company has been really great for me. You might want to take a look at it in your area. I am now working for the Dallas County Public Defender's Office. I got a job as a paralegal / legal secretary. I worked with the chief public defender, got in, explained that I have felony on my record, was very upfront. And this particular county believes in giving people with criminal backgrounds a chance. So I was fortunate with that. So again, I must have applied over 1,200 places since I've been out. So don't give up, because you can find something that's worthwhile.
You just got to be willing to go through extra hurdles.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been judged, been told, no,
but it didn't stop you.
And you can't let it stop you, because in every part of this process, someone's going to judge you or tell you no.
You know, Monday afternoon at 4:00, we're going to be interviewing a guy that's going to Taft Federal Prison, and his embezzlement was for over $1 billion, which is just incredible. So his restitution, and we've got questions in here about restitution. And yeah. Mariana, I'm going to answer that in a question in a second. Rebecca Crow, the one that's leaving on Monday, she had 2 more questions here. One, she said the reason why she's being remanded, her attorney told her it's because it's a drug charge, which I can tell you that might be that judge's specific reason. My charge was also a drug charge and I wasn't remanded. So it's not like anybody that's watching this, don't think if you have a drug charge, you're automatically remanded. That might be your judge, Rebecca. And then Rebecca's other question was, where did it go? Rebecca, do you have to go to the halfway house, and do they allow you to volunteer? And then Marianne, I'll ask your question next.
Okay. Everyone's going to get some form of halfway house time, and everybody thinks that you're automatically just going to go to home confinement. And so you're going to be working with your case manager once you're at your camp. And yes, so the answer is yes. I mean, I thought literally we've had people from halfway houses that manage them come in to speak at Victorville, where I was at. And yes, there is paperwork that they have to process to turn around and get you into home confinement. That's if that particular thing happens. Again, there's been a lot of change on how halfway houses are funded. So again, do your research and know what I'm going to tell you now is that it used to be they were flipping beds, meaning they were getting paid. So they were bringing a lot more people from camps, all different levels, were releasing to a halfway house, and they were hurrying up and getting you out to home confinement. That changed. That they're not getting funded like that anymore. So they're only getting paid for you and the rest amount of time that you may have. And so it doesn't behoove them to push you into home confinement because they're getting paid for you. Yeah, the answer is, we got somebody else coming behind you, but they're lazy. And so what I'm noticing is kind of a bottleneck even with that. So yes, there is amount of time, and there are also certain rules and a whole nother set of guidelines when you're at a halfway house before you can even be released into home confinement for maybe that small piece of whatever is left for your sentence. So working again with Dan and team, they can help maximize and help you maneuver those things, because there's a whole nother ballgame on halfway house. But yes, you will have some form of halfway house time.
Halfway house is fun.
It's just delightful. And I have a lot of people who have always told me, I got about 50% of women tell me they would have wished they would have stayed at the camp for the remainder of their sentence and not gone to halfway. The only other half.
Do you think they really would have? Because I hear it all the time too.
Yeah, I get 50-50. The other 50%, they have kids and they want to get out and they want to get reintegrated and get things going again with that. So it's about 50-50.
My halfway house was absolute fucking torture, to the point where I went back to county jail for 27 days. But
yeah,
it was my own fault. I fucked up. At least, I didn't do what they said I did. It was similar to your situation.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing, okay, look, guys, in the free world, when you have no obligations to any kind of a judicial system of any type, things that you do don't have the same type of consequences as when you're still, like right now, Holly's still under supervised release.
Yes, I am.
Even though she's here, she seems like she's completely free. At any moment, if she were to do something that they didn't like, they could come down and swat her like a fly. Where
100%.
for me right now, it's a little tougher because I'm free and clear. So my point is when Holly was blogging, like right now, if I were to write a blog and said the BOP and just threw them under the bus completely, there's nothing they could do about it. Holly was within their grasp. They didn't like what she did, so they flexed their power and mistreated her while she was in. So be real careful while you're tied to the system, whether you're on pretrial, whether you're in prison, whether you're in the halfway house, whether you're on supervised release. Until all of that is said and done, walk a fine line. And I'll let you expand on that, Holly, because I know Holly's been dealing with being a prison consultant. Holly, how long have you been trying to become a prison consultant?
Since day one, since April 12th of 2017, when I was released from Victorville.
And what was your biggest hurdle in not being able to be a consultant?
I'll flat out say my probation officer. My probation officer didn't find that it was valuable, a needed thing, doesn't want me discussing this, and said, no, it's something, no, not until you have a baseline of compliance with your supervision. Completely gray statement. And every time that I would go in and petition or ask her, she would say, no. It's just until recently that I've been able to, again, but I had to go all the way to my judge to be able to do this. And again, that takes a while.
How long?
Well, just November 6th of 2018. So, but again, having to walk a very fine line, because they do go through your social media. Working in the public defender's office and with these investigators, I know what they see. So they look at every aspect of everything and try and make one justification. That's all they need to try and violate. So again, it's a very fine line. If they say no, they mean no until you're able to be cleared.
So not everybody's going to be in agreement. I was very fortunate. I had an amazing probation officer. If I had had any other probation officer, as you guys know, I've battled it out with another prison consultant who has a YouTube channel, who does prison consulting, who is suing me for something that I didn't do, but very likely somebody that knew me did do it. And he went as far as calling my probation officer, sending faxes, trying to reach my judge. If I did not have a supervised release probation officer that believed in me and was behind what I was doing, they would have shut me down in a second.
Certainly.
So I was very fortunate because that's my career. This is what I do for a living now. So yeah, I'm glad
You
that you
just
finally
don't
got
know.
over that hurdle. So you have a different probation officer now,
Right, I
correct?
do. I
Okay.
do. I have a complete different probation officer, and he's been actually very, again, perfunctory, but very decent to work with. No, nowhere near what I had.
I found that most probation officers will, once they get to know you a little bit, they'll give you enough rope to either climb out of the hole or just fucking hang yourself, and then they cut the rope off.
Perfect statement. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because right now you've got a platform where you can either make it or you can screw it up and, you know, go the opposite direction. And it seems like you're doing everything right. We talked about bringing Holli onto our team to help with a lot of the women in the past, and she just wasn't able to do it because of her ties to probation and limitations. Now that those limitations have been lifted, a lot of you that are really, really seeking female guidance from somebody that's been there to give you that peace of mind, you know, we're going to make that offer to Holli again. So hopefully she accepts it, being she's already doing it.
Okay.
Let me ask another question here, Holli, that Marianne has.
Okay.
Marianne would love to hear about the restitution process. Some say they don't come after you after supervised release. Others say they chase you forever, including your husband.
Okay. Well,
okay. So you mean including the spouse of the person that doesn't owe money?
This is very, very good because this happened to me. So I'm on supervised release, and you have to provide your financials from day one, even when you're released on a white collar crime. I'm not sure about a drug charge, but on white collar crime, you still, I'm going, well, circumstances haven't changed. I've been, you know, locked up for 21 months. So, you know, nothing's going to change, but they're going to want 3 years of tax receipt. They're going to want, and if you live in a community property state, like I did in California, they're going to want your spouse's financials as well, because they're going to take a look at everything. Even though that charge is just yours, they still, as a community property state, because once you're off paper, meaning supervised release, this becomes a civil, well, actually it becomes a civil judgment once you're into supervised release. You'll notice that it changes when you get your restitution statement. And whatever the judge ordered in your judgment and commit, that is a piece that you want to take a look at, is what your probation officer is going to look at. However, they also they take all your financials and they put it to the financial litigation unit. It's called the FLU. And get used to that when you owe restitution, the FLU. They're going to massage and take a look at it, and they're going to take and see, okay, she only makes $10 an hour. My judgment commit said I had to pay $3,000 a month. My judge said that. Prosecution slipped that right on in the end, and we didn't catch that. My attorney told me, calm down, don't worry. We'll be able to do a modification of restitution. And I'm like, okay, sure. Anyway, yes, that can be done. It's timely, but my probation officer expected me when in my first meeting that she wanted $3,000 a month. I did not make $3,000 a month. The other part of it, well, your spouse stood right next to you. He can help you pay for it. No, he's not the one that did anything wrong. This is me. Because again, they take a look and they're looking at both financials. This doesn't happen to everybody, but I have had friends that we have similar stories. So I've been battling, going back and forth, and finally the FLU set up payments for $600 a month based on what I make, which is still taking a hell of a lot of my paycheck. But basically they said, you know, pay $600, we're going to leave you alone. You asked about after supervised release, if the FLU will still come after you. I've had 50-50. Again, 50% of the people that I know continue to pay. They don't pay as much as they did, but they do continue to pay because they do have the FLU. They've received letters from the FLU. And then again, 50% that just quit paying and they haven't been bothered with. So my advice is always to pay something to continue on. Maybe not what was ordered perhaps, but again, they can re-up this judgment every 20 years. So it's not like it's going to go away.
It's there.
It's there.
buying a house, anything like that.
This is
It's
my
gonna be there.
opinion, and this is what I've been going through. And again, I've had other people who have gone through it, and yes, they have looked at, and I was told by the flu face to face that yes, we are allowed to look at your spouse's assets.
Is there any difference in maybe how married couples file taxes? Does that have a play?
Doesn't have a play in it either. Has no
Okay.
play in it. Zero. A lot of people decide to get a legal separation or a divorce to make it
Avoid.
go away. And I can tell you with that, because a lot of women suggested I do that when I was in Victorville. You should just get divorced and you won't have this problem on the backside. The flu again told me that's not necessarily true, because we had this conversation with two attorneys present, and they said that they look at when the crime was committed. And if you were married during that time period, they're going to go back and look at assets during that time period. How they do it, I don't know, but they did tell me that. So
It doesn't, I was so fortunate not to have to deal with anything like that. I'd probably still be on supervised release. Todd just asked, Dan, yes, I'm finished with my supervised release. I was given 36 months and early terminated after
fantastic.
14 months, but I didn't owe restitution. However, once we saw it work, we started offering it as a service to clients that were trying to get off supervised release. And we've gotten probably 4 or 5 people off of supervised release while they are still paying restitution. But
That's great.
So our clients now, when they go into prison, ones that we know that are owing restitution, most of them aren't really ordered to pay anything other than a minimal fee through FRP, financial responsibility payments in prison. But we have them paying extra towards it to show once they get out, they've been making these attempts, good faith efforts. No guarantee it's going to assist, but it does go a long way in showing that, hey, this person was paying money when they didn't have to. It does increase the out, because once you're off supervised release, they can no longer dangle going back to prison. Now it becomes more of a civil issue. So do your best to make as many payments as you can.
Make a plan, have that plan, pay more FRP, because they do look at it. White collar crime, I owed a lot. They took more amount money again out of my FRP. They gave me the minimal budget to live with. But so knowing all this, there's again, all these pieces that you have to know and possibilities that can happen. And, I tried to minimize it. Mine was in my JNC. So I had to really work on trying to work with the flu to get it to a manageable amount.
Good advice for you guys.
Yeah.
Holli's dealing with a lot of the opposites that I dealt with. So it's great to hear that the complete different.
It can happen.
I never went to the shoe. I never dealt with any of that. I just parked my ass at Coleman, did my time, and we served the same exact amount of time. You did 13 months, correct?
I did 13, right?
Yeah, so I did 13 as well. But that was because of RDAP and halfway house and good time and everything else. Yeah. Does anybody have any other specific questions for Holli? If not, I want to jump topic here a little bit, and feel free to chime in with some more prison related, getting ready to go type of questions, especially you, Rebecca. If anything else jumps in your mind, ask. Holli, what's your take? So on this government, now I know the government shutdown affects everything government related to an aspect, but specifically within the federal prison system, we've seen a lot of newspaper articles from like USA Today. We've seen stuff on CNN where specifically at Coleman, and I can't remember the guy's name, I don't have it written down right now, but the spokesperson for Coleman in charge of the union over there was really upset that they're getting made fun of by the inmates. And I guess the ongoing joke in the prison system right now is, as guards and try to enforce policy on inmates are going, I'm making $6 a month and it's more than you're making right now. Ha ha. And now I'm not going to say I encourage anybody to go poke at, the sleeping dragon, but why do you think inmates are taking these jabs?
Because again, they feel that the boot is usually on their neck every single day. And I do believe that these little jabs are to, of course, get back with anything. It's to say, hey, nanny, you're having to be here with us, and now you're not even getting paid for that. Again, it's a choice. It's a job. you're going to live, you're going to do this. It's a choice. It's a job. It's a government job. The government shut down. So I look at it that, yeah, they're trying to spin it where they're running in 16-hour shifts. Their safety is compromised because people aren't calling, they're calling in and they're not coming in. So everybody, it's just a skeleton crew. It actually hurts more on the inmates than anything, because again, they're going to lock you up. They're going to lock you in. They just aren't going to be on top of letting visitation, probably longer lines, longer time period to try and get you processed to visit. I'm hearing things where they're not opening the chow hall, the dining hall. They're just keeping you locked in all day on the weekend. It's a big effect. People aren't being processed to get to halfway house. The new First Step Act, obviously there's issues with the language on how it was written. The BOP is taking a look at that and challenging that and not making that retroactive. No one's working. So not only that, they're not even looking at the language right now because nobody's working. So yeah, this is detrimental.
So we got Rebecca. I'll answer your question in 1 second. Rebecca had a restitution question about will they take money that gets put on her books. So I'll let you answer that first. And while you're thinking of your answer on that, we also got a question from Tear Talk Correction, who has a YouTube channel, who specifically focuses on more of the correctional officer side of things. He is a correctional officer. I can't remember. But he asked, how is your relationship with staff? So while you're thinking about that question, I'm going to go ahead and answer that as well for myself. My relationship with staff wasn't great. However, I chose not to bark back. Constantly, though, the majority of the staff, and I was at a low security prison where, in my opinion, it wasn't needed to rule with an iron fist. We were fearful enough to do anything stupid because if we did, we would immediately get moved either to the shoe or they'd chip you to the medium. If you got enough points, enough shots, and it would raise your point level high enough, you're bounced out to the medium in a quickness where real prison politics exists. Blacks got to stick with blacks, whites got to stick with whites. You're worrying about what your paperwork says. These are real issues. Where at a low security, for the most part, everyone kind of keeps to themselves. And the fact that these COs, these correctional officers, would run through like gang task force and shred our units and really just demean us, talk down to us. When I saw the spokesperson for the union at Coulman, when I saw him say, we shouldn't have to take this from the inmates, immediately I went back into my mind and I said, you know what? You kind of brought this on yourself because you're constantly doing things that are unnecessarily deemed. You're not treating us. Now, there were some good ones. There were a handful of decent guys, but the majority,
handful,
a handful, but the majority of them really went out of their way to flex and make it known that you're an inmate, nothing more, and you're going to do everything I say with this God complex. I never bounced off of that. I never gave them what they were looking for. I never fired back. I figured if I just shut up and take it long enough, they'll move on to the next person that they're going to get a reaction from, which is exactly what happened. So I think they kind of brought that on themselves to an extent. What's your take on that, Holly? How are you treated by staff in prison?
I would look at it from the same standpoint. We'd have guards come in to count us at night, jingling the keys. You'll never forget keys, talking loud. These women got to be up. They're doing all the work for the whole complex, being complete jerks. And then if you say anything about it, they're looking for the first person to say something about it because that's what they want to do. They come in again, shred the units, doing things that, we're the low level women of the camp. Again, the women of the camp were maintaining the whole complex. So, these women aren't looking to get into any trouble. They're just kind of wanting to do your own thing. Same thing. Didn't really want to get in the face. I wanted to expose them by the way I was doing with my blogging and showing that they weren't living up to their program statements, and exposing some of this stuff because it's not fair treatment and there was no voice. There is no voice. But yeah, that's what I saw. And they don't have to be like this. This is a low level. These women are just trying to get through their day, trying to get through the rest of their time that they have to do. I never was scared of the women. Never scared of the women. Really. You got people that don't like you. Okay, great. But for the most part, everybody kind of just does their thing and gets along, because you don't want things taken away. But these guards they just go overboard. It's amazing to me, and going, really, this is how you're going to be, quote, productive for your day?
It was
so they bring it
insane.
on themselves. Yes.
Yeah, it was a little, I could understand it, like maybe like a higher security where
Oh, yeah.
you can't give them an inch, because if you do, it could be your life. But no COs were getting beat up at the camp or the low or even threatened. I mean, I got up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I didn't know they were in the middle of count time. And you would have thought I did like the worst thing ever, the way this guy just woke up the entire unit. And it was because I was an RDAP. This officer had it out for anybody that was an RDAP. He wanted to say it was a snitch unit. It was a stupid program. It doesn't actually help anybody. And he would tell us this. And, in prison, you're already broken. You're already thinking, well, fuck, maybe I am a scumbag and I deserve this kind of treatment. Then you expect somebody to get out of prison, and you go through this really horrible atmosphere of a halfway house. Then you're released from that, and you expect people to like get their shit together. I'm not making excuses for people, because anybody will look for a reason to screw up, but it doesn't help when you're just constantly putting somebody down.
Right.
Question from, so we had two questions from from Rebecca. Rebecca asked, where did it go? Rebecca, if I have restitution, are they going to take money that gets put on my books? If they are going to, how much?
Okay.
Typically.
So, Rebecca, do you know? Well, obviously you don't, because you don't know what your judgment commit's going to be. Your judge is going to set maybe a percentage of what you're going to make, and he could stay it until you're on supervised release, meaning that you're not going to be responsible for paying anything to that. It's just going to depend. But yes, your counselor is going to sit down and going to meet with you, and is going to tell you, I'm going to be taking such and such amount. They can take, I'm going to this is just a ballpark, okay, $25, maybe a quarter every 3 months. It could be more than that. Mine eventually climbed, because again, when a white collar criminal and you have a lot of restitution, and mine said, even though I didn't have to pay until I was on supervised release, they still took quite a bit out in my FRP. And he's the one that made the decision. And based on, but I have other people that I was with, it said that they were only going to be taking, 10%. So they're going to take some form. They're going to take some money. Yes.
And that usually has a lot to do with probably your, like if you go into the prison completely indigent.
Yes.
And you have no income, you have no real family support, and you explain this to the judge, it's probably more likely that you, like she said, you can have a stay to where it doesn't start until, it won't even start while you're in the halfway house, supervisory, home confinement. It will start once you're on supervised release, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
She's also asking, do you think the judge is going to, her exact question is, do you think the judge is going to be a dick because he's not getting paid? Are federal judges not getting paid? I don't know the answer to that.
Gosh, I think they are. I actually believe that they are. It's not been waived that they are getting paid. So I don't think their personal pay is going to come into this factor. I think it depends on what type of reputation they already have and what typically they sentence people. That's what you kind of need to focus on, or what your attorney / public defender has kind of told you what to expect.
And she's asking, I forgot Rebecca, I forgot what area you live in. She asked, which camp do you think is best? So if you tell me where you're at, Rebecca, I forgot what state you're in. I don't have your file in front of me. Maybe you can give her some feedback on which camp she should ask to be surrendered to, or not surrendered to, transferred to at some point.
Transferred to. Okay. Well, again, met with many, many people, and I find the smaller institutions better.
Colorado.
She's going to be in Colorado. So what are they going to do? Phoenix or Texas?
Which one? She's going to
Probably.
ask. She's going to ask for a recommendation.
I'd ask for Bryan, Texas.
Bryan, Texas.
Yeah,
Bryan has RDAP, right? I believe.
Yeah, they do. Bryan does have RDAP. Yes, they certainly do. It's 1,200. It's around 1,300 women, I believe. I do.
Wow, that's a large camp.
It is a large camp. It is all women standalone. It is large, but they have more programs, meaning they have more things that you can fill your time up with. They have cosmetology, they have horticulture. I know several people that have been there. So it gives you something to do with your time.
What programs? So I don't know how closely you're following the reform bill, First Step Act.
Huge.
We don't know what programs are going to count towards programming credits yet, but that's a great recommendation, Rebecca, because Colorado or Texas, Bryan, Texas, because it has so many programs, I would expect there's probably going to be a good chance, and a lot of those programs are probably ACE classes, I would assume, Holly.
They are. Yes.
Okay. ACE classes basically means like culinary arts is an ACE class. So when you take culinary arts from prison, when you leave prison, you can actually apply that certificate you got to the real world. What we're thinking when we had Mr. Root on last week, 2 weeks ago, he stated he believes a lot of the ACE classes are going to be used towards prison credits. We don't know if it's going to be retroactive. It doesn't look like it's going to be retroactive, but technically they have about 3 years before any of this is going to be implemented.
Right.
They've got 200 days. And then once they make the classes, they got another 365 days to implement it. So we're still several years possibly out before we see any real implementation of that. The only real benefit we're seeing right now from First Step is we're probably going to start seeing additional halfway house time.
Right.
Maybe even home confinement. I know you were talking about home confinement, but if you look at it in the aspect of a lot of people are going to be pushed out because when their good time gets calculated, now they're just being released. Halfway houses are going to be just releasing people home. They're going to need to bring people in. They're going to probably want to fill up the halfway houses. Pushing people to home confinement does free up some bed space to keep that money coming. So I think we're going to start seeing more halfway house time given just from the program funding. This might be the only good thing that the Trump administration has gotten behind so far.
Well, yeah.
Whatever his reasons were,
whatever the reasons,
get reelected, whatever it is, it's something that needed to happen. So I'm glad that we're seeing it.
But she was asking what best facility for her in Colorado. Even Victorville, where I was like, it's 300 women. It's very tiny, very easy to maneuver, except that it's on a complex where, again, it's men's penitentiary and 2 men's medium. So the women do all the work on the whole complex. So, it's kind of give and take. So I always try and take a look and see if you have medical issues, where it would be best to go to. But for her, Bryan, it sounds like.
She was asking if there's anything that you know of near North Dakota.
Waseca. There's Waseca. And I would never, ever, ever, ever suggest anybody to go to Waseca. Everybody that came from Waseca was glad to get the hell out of there. So.
Yeah, that's crazy when you meet people, because, I was in Coleman, which was a low, and we would see a lot of guys coming from either Miami camp or Pensacola camp because they got in trouble for whatever phones and they all talked about how awesome it was. We spoke to guys that came from some of the other camps and they were like, this is way better than the camp I was at. So for somebody to say that the low security is better than the camp they were at kind of speaks volumes.
It sure does. Yeah.
You're talking about Bryan, Texas, having so many inmates. I would also imagine having more inmates has a lot of benefit to it. It's easier to kind of like fly under the radar.
It is.
It's easier to take
disappear. Right.
Yeah. When you got the higher populated prisons, there's more programming within that prison because there's a higher need for it. When you have these prison camps with like 150 people, it's great. There's nothing going on, but there's also nothing really to do. Even the exercise classes are scarce.
There's nothing, beneficial. There were no programs.
What did you do to kill your time when you were in?
I wrote. So my biggest thing for me is everybody, I would write people's stories, go sit with them, help them write motions. They had child custody issues, try and help with that. But I wrote, that was what I filled my day up. Some people go and walk that horrible track. It's just nothing but rock and dirt. Some people just very scheduled because there's so much free time. There's so much downtime. So you got to fill it up. You got to start. Was making plans, trying to write letters, again, I wrote my judge. I wrote my future probation officer letters on what it is I wanted to do, move forward. Just fill my day up. I wrote.
So you were a writer. And I would say it's pretty easy. I mean, there's 3,000 inmates where I was at. They had tons of programs, but most of the stuff that I was engaged in wasn't facilitated by the prison. It was my own groups I was involved in, exercising, taking classes. A lot of them were just inmate classes where we'd go to someone's unit, you'd get permission, you'd go to a unit, you'd sit for an hour class. I found it very easy to I don't want to say kill time, because I thought I was pretty content with what I was doing with my time to maximize the use of it. Right. Like you said, writing, reading, taking classes, exercising, making food on the weekends, movie night. It wasn't the worst experience, but somebody asked, what's your take on medical? Linda Hicks, if you have a lot of medical issues, do they take care of you? That's my biggest concern.
No.
No.
I love, no.
He said no.
Like, and I'm gonna use the term, you're fucked if you're, I did not see any good healthcare. I saw pill line dispense medication, and it was mostly for people who were diabetic. I did not see anything. I saw horrendous things where people were in severe, severe pain. They needed surgery. They needed to be taken out. And again, where I was at, the doctor tended to be more for the men's complex instead of coming to the women's camp. So people would go to sick call and sit at sick call, which you have to pay for, and never be seen. Or the person that's dispensing necessarily at pill line would take a look at whatever and be like, no, you're fine, go back. Officers just completely being blatantly ignored. So no, health issues are to me is the hardest thing, is to explain somebody that you think you can bring in your medication in your clear bag and that you're going to get that medication on the other side. They have a formulary chart. They're going to take a look and see what's equivalent. And for some things, like, again, you're diabetic, you need your insulin, they're going to do that, but they don't manage that very well either. I have seen the ambulance come in several times where it's almost to the point of, death. It's so dire that the women are taken out and then a couple of days later brought back. But because one was withheld, they didn't have her insulin and she went without it. And again, how these officers could just think that nothing's going to happen to her, they ended up having to call the ambulance and take her out. So you really have to manage your own, try and bundle up, don't get sick, try and eat as healthy as possible, soups, just try and get as much nutrition as you can, because there is no medical.
Yeah, medical's pretty, I didn't have a whole lot of run-ins with medical other than just basic stuff. And one time this is when I was still on a top bunk. I almost fell out of my bunk. I was taking a midday little nap on a Saturday, just got done working out. I was up reading my book and I kind of passed out on my bunk, very comfortable. And something startled me and I almost fell out of my bunk, and the surgery was still fresh on my arm from the surgery I had right before I went into prison, where I tore my bicep off of my tendon off of my bicep. And I ripped open it wasn't healed all the way yet. The stitches were already out, but it was still fresh, and it ripped open and it was bleeding pretty decent, to the point where I had to use a shirt. I went up to the front to the officer on duty at the front, and I said, "Hey man, I need something for my arm, Band-Aids, gauze, something. I can't stop the bleeding." And he was in the door. So Coleman Low, just to back up a little bit, Coleman Low is what's called a 10-minute move prison. The top of every hour, you can move, meaning you'll hear 10-minute move yelled over the speakers. And that means you have 10 minutes to get from location to location. You can go from your unit to the yard, from your unit to the library, from your unit to the education hall, wherever. You get 10 minutes. On the weekend, we have what's called open compound, where the doors are just open all day, except for nighttime. And the only time you got to be in the unit really is during count time. So the doors were open. I asked the guy, the officer on unit, I said, I need to go to medical. I need to see what they can do to stop the bleeding on my arm. And he's like, doors are open. I don't care what you do. So I was like, all right. So I went over there, walked in, waiting. Finally, somebody came out. It was one of the male doctors. He's like, can I help you? I was like, I need something for my arm. It won't stop bleeding. So he looks at it and he's like, it's not whatever, it's not sick call right now or anything like that. And I was like, I know, but my arm won't stop bleeding. So he attempted to give me a shot for being there during a time that I'm not supposed to be there. And he's not a correctional officer. He's just a civilian worker that works within the prison system. And I said, look, I'm not here trying to make, and I remember saying to him exactly, I'm not here to make your life any harder. I'm bleeding and it won't stop bleeding. He called to my unit over to C2, the RDAP unit, and said, did you allow inmate, he gave him my number, inmate Wise to come over here? The staff, the correctional officer said, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it was 10 seconds ago prior to that. So he did admit to it. He gave me a series 300 shot for being out of bounds, which was a big deal. Monday morning. Yeah, he did give me a Band-Aid to put over a scar that was opened up that was that wide. I had one Band-Aid to try to close it and put a Band-Aid on there, which eventually, with enough compression, it stopped bleeding. Monday morning, if it wasn't for Dr. Smith, who was the RDAP coordinator of Coulman, she went over there and raised hell. Within about 24 hours, the shot was completely dismissed. But that's the type of stuff that you have to deal with. And I do get it. There are people that abuse the system. There are people that are at sick call every 10 seconds. But goddamn, you took this job. You know what you're dealing with. You know you're dealing with people that are going to take advantage, but you also know not everybody,
not everybody.
You're I had to deal with, and it was frustrating.
And it's like that. We would have given you a maxi pad and told you to wrap it up, and that's how.
Yeah, you can't see. And that's another thing. I feel like I was discriminated against because I could not buy maxi pads. I heard they were great for nosebleeds. They were great for all kinds of things over there.
Or we use them as furniture pads too. You get gray bins. We had these gray bins that went underneath a bunk, and that's where you kept your food at the time with a lock on it. And
so it was like little to slide them.
I tell you, yeah. But again, for medical, people just didn't. These people were not making things up. They needed stomach surgery. Kept pushing the stomach surgery off. Massive pain. So again,
that's why a lot of people didn't play sports in prison. They were too afraid of getting hurt, knowing.
You don't play. That's another thing.
I refused to play soccer for that reason, and I refused to play football, even though it was flag football or two-hand touch. Trust me, these guys were laying some like NFL size hits, and I wasn't about to go in there and do something devastating. Got a question here, Jude. I don't want to mispronounce your name. Looks like Jude Kavan. Hi, love your content, Dan. Question. Oh, this question for me. When you released, were you not allowed to live with Shelly since she was a convicted felon? Great question. They tried. While we were on pre-trial, the prosecutor tried to argue that we should not be able to live together because we're co-defendants. And at some point they were saying there's an opportunity that they may be testifying against each other. And the fact that they're felons, they shouldn't be able to live together. The judge denied the request from the government, and the judge approved us to, as long as probation was okay with it once we got out, as long as your U.S. probation officer approves, you can live with whoever you want. They just have to approve it. So we did have to get approval, but I was allowed to live with her right out of the gate.
And to add to that, Dan, I've had women where they've had a family member that's a felon, and they're in the home that they go to. Again, it was probation that had to approve it. So
usually at that point, it's up to probation. We got a shout out from Chris Cruz. Shout out from Pasadena, Texas. Where are you at in Texas?
I'm in Dallas.
Dallas, Texas. Texas. So were you happy about the outcome of the Dallas game, or you don't care?
I'm a Denver fan. I didn't care.
Okay, Denver fan. He doesn't care. Let me see here. Danbury. Oh, people are asking about Danbury. Federal prison.
Danbury. I just had a person that I know that went there. Yes, Danbury. No, it is run down. It's old. It is cruddy. They have problems with the bathrooms. The women, no matter the unit, people who are in charge of even cleaning are having issues. Pipes bad. Officers about the same. I would say, status quo, but just an overall place that's just. It's already a rundown. They're already run down. It's really bad.
So there you go, Patricia. Patricia Adams, literally, as I asked that, she said, Dan, how would you and Holly rate the camp at Danbury? Not good.
Not good.
Not good. We should do a rating system. We should put that on the
Yeah,
site.
we
should
should.
list all of the prisons and give it a
Great.
rating system.
Yeah, Alderson to me, again, still one of the best places that go. West Virginia, but it's, when you're
Did you know at Alderson? I don't know if you knew this. You know about Captain Grimes. Everybody knows.
Yes,
if you don't know about Captain Grimes, go watch some other videos. He was sentenced to 10 years. But
yes,
did you know they made that a holiday at the prison? The day he was sentenced, they made it a prison holiday for Alderson. I didn't know that, which I thought was all of the staff is behind Captain Grimes. They all say he was wrongly accused.
Correct. And I'm sure, yeah. Well, they have an officer that's going through this in Victorville right now. So, and he is set to be sentenced.
Who?
So, Gamez is the last name, Officer Gamez, Gamez.
What for? Same thing?
Sexually abusing, yes.
Oh, send me the tidbits on that. It's crazy how these stories are not publicized.
No, they keep them. They try and keep them very low key.
You take candy out of the damn store, and you're all over it in every news article out there. If you're a correctional officer, you work within the BOP, and you're raping people, and they don't advertise these stories, they keep it very hush hush.
Very.
Which I guess it gives us something to do. Matthew Garver, what's up? Matthew Garver is our cameraman / friend. He lives here in not Spokane, he lives in Idaho, but he travels over here to help us with video shooting from time to time. Patricia Adams, is it possible to get a change of designation? I only have 5 months at Danbury. So she's been sounds like she's saying she's been sentenced to 5 months. She wants to know if it's possible to get redesignated.
It's very hard at this point. I can't say it can't be done. You can put a request in but again, it comes from the Bureau of Prisons has already made their decision. So for them to go back,
you have to have a pretty good reason.
Very, very good reason. Like a health reason, meaning that maybe you need to go to Carswell instead of.
Somebody with a 5-month sentence, what's the likelihood of getting some halfway house time?
Okay, so that's a very good question because I've had people with under a year and a day that still received halfway house time. That day usually designates you to get halfway or more halfway house time. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but you need to be prepared to have a very good conversation with your case manager and as to reason why on reentry. It needs to be really focused on what the needs are and what you need on reentry to get that. On a 5-month sentence.
It's rough. So Patricia, you're surrendering in 2 weeks for a 5-month sentence. Some advice I would tell you is do not tell them. I don't know if you do or not. If you do have a job lined up for you waiting, tell them you have no job lined up waiting.
Correct.
One of the biggest reasons they give halfway house to people or additional halfway house is to give them time to reintegrate back into society, finding a job, saving some money so you can get back on your feet. If you tell them you have that, if you go to your case manager and be like, yeah, here's everything, I'm ready to go. They might go, well, you need no halfway house time because you got a job and a home waiting for you. Less is more. Even if you have that stuff waiting for you, don't tell them.
That's why I said that whole reentry piece. I need help with my reentry. Yeah, I need every aspect of it.
We got a question here about, where was that question? Atwood camp. Is there a Atwood female camp?
I am not familiar with Atwood.
I will check Marianne. Marianne's asking, has anybody been to Atwood camp? I don't have any. I know Atwood prison, but I didn't know if I've had no women go there. I can tell you.
I have not had that.
Rebecca heard that Arizona was good.
Phoenix?
So to sum it up, Rebecca wanted to know, are you recommending Texas?
I am recommending Bryan, Texas over Phoenix, yes.
Okay. Will I be able to get my outside cancer and MS care?
Okay, this is difficult. My bunkie had breast cancer and she needed to keep on with her chemo. So they gave her tamoxifen, which is an oral chemo. And they did send her out once every year. She was there for 4 years, once a year to meet with a doctor. So, and she had a ton of medical records that stated that she really needed to have and be seen at on a frequent basis. and that was completely ignored. So you may get seen, but it just may take a while.
By outside care.
By outside care. Right.
Tier Talk, Anthony Ganji from Tier Talks said, Dan, but if the person has a job, wouldn't that be unfair to someone who needs placement in the halfway house because they don't? I would disagree with what was stated because you're taking a bed away from someone who needs it. So being that I was in the halfway house with several people, I have several clients in the halfway house right now. If we lived in a fair, just world, I would tend to agree with you, Anthony. However, the majority of the people that I met in the halfway house were there to run amok. They didn't have jobs. They wouldn't go look for a job.
Nope.
They would get a pass to go look for a job, and they would have it already set up to where, so in the halfway house, when you're going to go look for a job, you have to get approved where you're going to go look for the job. You have to prove that you were there. You have to bring back something from the employment of where you're seeking. I'm going to say more than half of the individuals that I was with in the halfway house. The reason why the halfway house was run like a shithole was because inmates abusing it to the point where they need jobs, but they're not trying to get jobs. They're going back to street level stuff. They're getting back to selling drugs. They're getting back to criminal ways. And they're using up the time. They're hurting it for somebody like me who's legitimately trying to get a job. Instead of getting a job, they're going out and they're having their friends and family go get something from the place where they're supposed to go look for a job. They get it signed. And then the inmate would just go home, go eat food, go hang out with the girlfriend, go hang out with the boys. They would do stuff constantly, which is called detouring, or they may call it when you're out of bounds, you're somewhere where you're not supposed to be. This happens so often.
Huge, even on my experience, Dan.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, every single person I've dealt with, when I ask them what the halfway house is like, and I ask them how many people go off the grid and say they're going to work or going to look for a job and then go somewhere else, more than half. So yes, in a perfect dome bubble where you're looking at how it's supposed to work, it's designed, focus. Yes, you would be taking bed space away from somebody else. Most of my clients are not trying to get into further trouble. They're not trying to make it harder for themselves. They legitimately want to get home, go to work. So when I know half the people that are there are just abusing it and they're wasting space for other people, I say go for it, because most of the people there are not trying. And that's the argument that would be made, Anthony, clearly. And I can see why you're saying that. I'm not saying that you're wrong for thinking that process. That would be my thought process initially as well. But I know for a fact that's not how it works. So you're either going to work the system to somewhat to your advantage, or you're just going to let some moron go there and fuck it up, and you should be there anyway. So it's all from the perspective that you're dealing with.
To that point, yes, but it's even when you're having that, even if you have a job lined up, there is still some form of reentry piece that's needed. So yeah, everybody thinks you're gaming the system or you're gaming it. There's still some form of help when you even get there, because there could be other needs that you need, but it's not guaranteed necessarily. Again, nothing's ever guaranteed. You may have a promise of a job, but you're still going to need some help when you get to a halfway house. So
yeah, I look at consequences. And that's one thing I didn't used to do, is I didn't used to look at consequences. And I look at consequences now. And if I'm willing to live with the consequence, then I say go for it. Right. If you're in a camp and you want to play with a cell phone and you focus on that consequence and you go, the consequence could send me to a low, it could send me to the shoe, but I'm okay with that. Get on a cell phone, have fun. Maybe not everybody there is trying to just look at porn or sell drugs. Maybe you have a legitimate business. It's in a lot of prisons, you're not allowed to run your business from prison. Correct. They won't allow you to discuss business over the phone. And I get it. It's a prison rule. It doesn't always make sense, but it's there because they don't want to have to take the time to determine whether or not your business is legitimate, or is it going to cause the prison problem. So I understand why the prison blankets that. But at the same time, if you have a legitimate business while you're in prison, which I did, I got in so much trouble for telling my partner over the phone, giving him instructions
or a guidance. Yeah. No.
I got pulled in almost. Yeah. I got threatened to lose good time. I got threatened to lose commissary. I got threatened to lose visitation. If I would have had access to a cell phone, I lost my business because I couldn't run it. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. It completely destroyed everything that I thought I was going to come home to.
Right.
In the end, it worked out because here I am, but not everybody is going to become, a prison consultant or a successful YouTube channel. It doesn't happen for everybody. So you have to focus on the consequences. And if you're willing to be okay with whatever that consequence could be, then it's a good decision.
Yeah.
Are there camps for women in Colorado?
No.
I don't think so. Are there?
No.
No, Rebecca, no camps in Colorado for women.
No federal camps in Colorado. So your federal camps.
What's your take on co-ed camps?
Co-ed camps?
I never went to one.
As in
men and women?
I'm
sorry, not camp. Halfway house.
Halfway house. Oh, God.
Everyone's like, wait, where do these co-ed camps exist? Holy shit. I meant halfway house.
Halfway house. Absolutely hated it. Remember, all levels are releasing. It's not just camp level, low. You've got everybody releasing that has worked their way down to go into a halfway house. Men were on one side, women were the other. I was in a place that was an old Piggly Wiggly converted grocery store and dirty. And women were able to come out into the main area where there were tables and the refrigerators on the even hours, men on the odd hours. You couldn't go past 6 o'clock out into the main room. And people that left in the morning for jobs had to, of course, sign in out, and you had to call from your employment on a landline, not a cell phone, to verify that's where you were. These guys get more contraband, both women and men. There were more drugs, more alcohol, more everything filtering through that place than, I mean, it was scary. And I was at a very small halfway house in Greenville, South Carolina, and everybody was like, that's another story from going from California to Greenville. But I was in a very small one. There were 6 women when I got in there. There were 45 men. So the safety factor for me, even though you're not locked into your facility, your bedroom area, where we also had like a little TV, a table, a washer and dryer, an ironing board, a payphone, and then the sleeping area. And our sleeping area butted up against the men's bathroom. So everything that was going on in that men's bathroom until late, loud, noisy, just horrible. You didn't know. They can come through that wall. They can do anything they want. There was no security. So no, I did not find it a good experience. The case managers that were there, again, they're making $10, $8, $10 an hour. Horrible. They don't want to be bothered. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to help you.
Not to talk bad about anybody in their profession or jobs that they take, but just to give you an idea, case managers in the prison, they're not the best either, but they're usually a little bit more level of an education that is there. The pay grade is, they can feed their family off of the money that they make for sure. Halfway house, my case manager in the halfway house was a young lady, super sweet, super nice, way in over her head. I just saw her the other day at the supermarket. She's the cashier at the supermarket now. And nothing against that. It's a job, but there's no requirements other than maybe a high school education or a GED to become a case manager in a federal halfway house. And it's such a shit show. It's almost ridiculous.
Here's the issue I had. My case manager, and we'll talk about this is a story. They were doing basically the cell phone program, the Obama cell phone program, where you qualify and you're able to go out and get one. I didn't qualify. God only knows when I released, I didn't qualify still. But she did. And she was able to go get 2 phones, not 1, but 2.
So your case manager qualified.
Correct.
Here you are fresh from prison.
But didn't qualify. So just,
Problem is we probably can't even talk about the reasons on YouTube.
No, I can't tell you, but anyway. Halfway house is not, to me, there was really no help. Again, if you are proactive, you have to be proactive. If you're going to go out and look for a job, you're going to put your pass in, you're going to go look for the job. Right. You need hygiene, you're going to put a pass in to go get your hygiene. It is not a place that anybody is going to come in and help.
You're not going to relax and chill in the halfway house. You're not going to when I get a job, I'm going to sit back. No. Even the guys that don't get jobs, even the ones that are making it hard, like when Anthony was asking that question, these guys aren't just hanging out in the halfway house. These guys are gone all day long as if they're at a job, but really they're just off hanging out, getting drunk, smoking weed, taking all kinds of supplements to pass the test. Because when you come back in the halfway house, you immediately have to blow to test your blood level for alcohol, random UA. So you don't know when, and I'd see guys get hit left and right. It's insane. Halfway house is not great.
It's not great.
So we had got a couple questions. We're going to wrap this up here in a minute. We're an hour in. I know you didn't. I remember you talking about, you've got some good insight on furloughs, if I'm correct. Furloughs from camps to go home on like weekend furloughs. I don't want to talk about that today. I want to have you back on to talk about furloughs. So guys, we're going to talk about furloughs in the next week or two with Holli, but two more questions here I want to ask. Daniel asked, Holli, what do you recommend to someone with a college education who may be heading to federal prison and eventually reentry?
Okay. Use your network, use your degree, use what you can to apply for every single thing. Take a look at the counties and cities that have offered, or companies, or like San Francisco, LA, Dallas County, where I'm at, who have done ban the box. It gets that foot in the door. Look, again, just start out by finding something. Go to temp agencies, explain that you have a record. They may be able to place you. You may not. I can tell you this, with a degree, because I have one, you probably are not going to have the same pay as you had before, but you may have a job. Somebody may give you that opportunity, but you have to continually seek and look at it.
Is it fair to say a lot of ex-offenders travel the route of entrepreneurship after prison?
Many have. Well, I can tell you, being in the corporate world, I'm looking for a county government position, but I will never work for a corporation again and be put in the situations that I was. I won't do that.
We're going to have to reiterate on what happened to you maybe on the next time. We'll go back through what happened, or I'll repost your original.
But yes, many have started their own businesses, and I think it's great.
Okay, last question, guys, unless I see another question pop up that's really relevant to this topic. Last question we have from Marianne. Is there a penalty for not going to a halfway house?
Penalty.
Like, let's say they give you your halfway house date and you're like, I don't want to go.
Okay. Well, yeah, there can be, and I'll try and make this short. They do have a quota remaining, meaning there is a performance plan that everybody has as a case manager there to get you through the process. Even if they give you a small amount of halfway house, they want to push you out the door. They want to get you going. There is a stipulation where they put a little tick that they moved you on. If you say, no, I don't want to go, the pressure is on. The case manager may come back to you and say, no, we really need to get you going. What are your concerns? And you might have more. I noticed this one individual that I was with refused to go. She just didn't want to go. She didn't want to be where men. She was abused, and she just didn't want to be in a co-ed situation. And so they just put the full big press on her to get her to go. She was delayed in going, but she did eventually go. So I didn't see being penalized, but there was more visibility. There were more people, more officers coming to talk to her and asking her why. And basically they were trying to say that she was being a nuisance at that point.
So they find a way to kick you out. We had the same thing happen. We had a guy that was at the low. He did not want to go. And I remember it was like 3 or 4 days. I was playing horseshoes with him. We're on the horseshoe pit. And he said, he was really telling me, he's like, man, I know I am going to screw up in the halfway house because I'll do better at home than I will in the halfway house because of the environment of the halfway house. He goes, I'll be back next week. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm just going to violate. I'm going to have a drink and I'll be back. And shit you not, a week and a half later, he was back happy as a pig in shit on the ham. Now he's on the handball court, just enjoying it. He's like, I don't want, and they gave him 6 months halfway house. He's like, he came back for 6 months versus the halfway house. So you will see it. Some people would rather be in prison than in the halfway house. Me personally, the halfway house was torture. I didn't cry my entire time in prison. I may have got a tear eye here or there from talking to my kids, but I never was like, oh my God, this is so bad. I never cried. I was like, this is not bad at all. My first night in the halfway house in Spokane, Washington, I was like, oh my God, where did I wake up at? I was mortified. I was like, I can't do this for 11 months. I was like, I just got done doing 13 months in prison. This is so much worse than prison. But I had within a week, I got into my routine. I was going to work every day, going home on the weekends. So, you know, initially it was shock though, pure shock.
This can be. So here's my thing. Again, Dan, just to kind of wrap things up for you too. There's phases that I always say. It's pre-sentence, it's sentencing, it's your incarceration piece, it's halfway house home confinement, it's supervised release. There's so much siloed in everyone. There's so many rules and regulations on each piece, and who's going to be over you and, you know, dictate your life for each of this and how to maneuver it. So again, what you and your team provide is just amazing, because
Back at you, you know,
all these questions. So
you're in that same league, Holly.
Yeah.
Real quick, we have one more question, only because it's you, Rebecca, and you're getting ready to go. So I'm going to let Holly answer your question. But guys, we've only got 14 thumbs up, and there was like almost 40 of you in the room. Let's bring up that thumbs up a little bit. Come on, show some love on the YouTube channel. Rebecca just had one last question. Can you do volunteer work in the halfway house instead of getting a job?
Okay. Yes and no. And on paper, it states that it's going to be up to your case manager. It also says that you can be a full-time employed. You can be going to school or do volunteer work or a combination. And some of case managers will let you do that. I'm just going to tell you, most of them are going to want you to work. So most of them are going to push to say, sure, if you want to volunteer, you can do it after your job.
And that's what I saw. The only person I saw that was able to do that was somebody that had a disability that really couldn't work. And they allowed him to go donate his time painting walls and stuff. So for the most part, they want their money. They're taking a percentage of your paycheck while you're in the halfway house. And if you're not working, they're probably not going to let you go on weekend passes. They're going to cut a lot of your gym passes. So if you want any of those additional privileges, I don't care if you're getting a job. Shelly took a job at a laundromat, washing clothes. Something she never would have done ever before this, but it got her out of the halfway house. So suck it up, do what you got to do. It's not going to last forever, and it gets you out of the halfway house.
Always remember there's an end to everything. So
there you go. Yeah. All right, guys, there you go. Holli Coulman, I appreciate it. As always, we're going to maybe make this a more frequent thing now that you're out and about and you don't have to slip around like a salamander.
Yeah, don't have to do that anymore.
All right, guys, just asked that to due to my age. I'll talk with you more on that, Rebecca, because I know the answers to that. Guys, I appreciate it. You're all very awesome. Make sure if you do like this video, share this content. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Holly's going to be joining us again. Hopefully, maybe we'll get her on once a week. We'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll bring back Wednesday night, ladies night, and we'll introduce you guys to Holli Coulman on a regular basis. If you got questions for Holly, post them in the comments of this video and on our next video, or email me 509-434-4695. My email, rdapdan@gmail.com, my website, rdapdan.com, all those fun places. We will answer your questions. And on the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about furloughs. How do you get a furlough? What's expected of you? Who qualifies? Who doesn't qualify? And how likely is it to actually happen? I'm RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting, one day at a time, people helping people, community is method. All right, guys, I am out of here. If I can figure out how to hit the stop button on this thing. Here we go. Stop video. That's how you do it. Later, guys. Peace.